Alright, what we're going to do today, kids, is we are going to talk about comparing integers and how we would do that. Now, remember this basic, rule of thumb. Comparing integers is the same as comparing any other type of number. Use the rules of the number line. So that's kind of one of the big things is integers we know are positive and negative numbers, and you can compare any amount, but you need to remember the rules of the number line still apply even when you're comparing integers. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the basic number line rules. Okay, just kind of like to refresh our memory from when we were younger. Okay, and see how they actually relate to integers. Number line rules. Remember, the further to the right a number is on the number line, the greater the value. So the further to the right, the greater its value. All right, and then of course the opposite applies. The further to the left a number is on the number line, the lower its value is. So if you go right, you are getting a greater number. If you go left, you are getting a lower number. Okay, so you have the greater numbers to the right of 0, the lower numbers to the left. So of course, if you looked at positive 2, it is going to be greater than negative 2. So, that is how we would know, because negative 2 is further to the left on the number line. Not only that, it's in the negatives versus the positives. Now, here's an interesting rule that you need to remember also, though. Negative integers closer to 0 are greater than negatives further away from 0. So, in other words, if you compare negative 8 and negative 2, negative 8 is less than negative 2. Alright? But negative 1 would be greater than negative 2. So remember, the closer a negative is to 0, the greater its value. The further away from 0, the lower its value. So you can compare negative to negative, but you just have to remember the relationship on the number line to 0. Okay? So, anyways, those are some of the basics, okay, for number line rules. And what I want to do now is I want to talk about the steps for comparing integers. Okay? Pretty basic. The steps for comparing integers starts with step number 1. Determine the values of the integers based on the given symbols. Now, this is important because on a lot of your testing and that sort of thing, they will throw in the different integer symbols. So, for example, this one right here is positive 2. It's just going to have a value of 2. So you could figure out where it is on the number line very easily. Negative 2, it's just negative 2. So you could figure out where it is on the number line. But then they throw in the absolute value of negative 2. Now we know that absolute values are always written as positive numbers, and we know the absolute value of negative 2 would be 2 units to the left of 0, so this is a positive 2. Alright, so when they say determine the values of the integers based on the given symbols, you have to look at the symbols carefully and say, okay, well, this is a negative 2, but they want the absolute value, which is going to be a positive amount. Or they can throw in the opposite of negative 2. Well, the opposite of negative 2 would, of course, be a positive 2. So the value for this one would be positive 2. So in this case, you'd have to be very, very careful when you were finding them on the number line, because the absolute value of 2 is going to actually be right there. The absolute value of negative 2 is going to have a value of 2 on the number line. And likewise with that. Alright? So that you need to keep in mind. So determine the values of the integers based on the given symbols. The next thing you have to do is locate the values on the number line. You might only be able to visualize or imagine locations. So for example, if they wanted you to find and compare a number such as this, negative 123, you're not going to have a number line that big. You're just going to have to be able to visualize in your head that it is to the left of 0 and how far it is. Okay? And then the third thing is to compare locations in relationship to left and right of 0. And again, all you have to do is remember where or visualize where they are on a number line and then compare them and know that if it's a positive 2, it's going to be to the right of 0. If it's a negative, it's going to be the left. And so then you know that positive 2 is greater than negative 2. All right, and we'll practice a couple of these. But anyways, the steps are to determine the value of the integers based on the given symbols. Step 2, locate the values on a number line. You might only be able to visualize or imagine locations. And step 3, compare locations in relationship to left and right of 0. All right. So anyways, let's take a minute and actually do some comparing. All right. Now, if you're not sure how to do this, you can watch the video. If you want to pause the video and try these on your own to start, you can go ahead and do that. You're going to be using the symbols less than, greater than, and don't forget equal to. Okay? So those are the symbols you will use to compare the following integers. If you want to stop the video and try them on your own, you can certainly go ahead and do that. All right, well, here we go. If you've started the video or if you're continuing to watch the video, I'll show you how we do this. This is negative 5 compared to positive 3. Now, of course, the value of negative 5 will be right here on the number line. So negative 5 is right here. We have 0, 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's right there. Then you have positive 3. Positive 3 will be over here in between positive 2 and 4. Now we want to compare them, and we will go from left to right on the number line. Well, obviously, negative 5 is to the left of 0. It's to the left of 3. So negative 5 is less than positive 3. And then if we reverse them and we ask ourselves to compare positive 5 to negative 3, we could then say, okay, well, positive 5 is right here. Negative 3 is right here. Positive 5 is to the right of negative 3. That means positive 5 is greater than negative 3. For problem number 3, we have the absolute value of 7 compared to negative 9. Now remember, we have to think of the value they're talking about here. And the value they're talking about is a positive 7. And so what we're comparing is a positive 7, which will actually be right here on the number line, to a negative 9, which is right there on the number line. Because you have 8, negative 9, negative 10. So in this case, you have a positive, which is to the right of a negative. So the absolute value of positive 7 is greater than the value of negative 9. Then we come over to this problem right here, and we see that we have the absolute value of negative 4 compared to the value of positive 4. Well, in this case, again, we're going to change this to its value based on the symbols, and that would be a positive 4. And so it would be right here. The absolute value of 4 on the number line is right there. And then we have 4. So we actually have our other number right there also that we're comparing with. So in this case, the absolute value of 4 is equal to positive 4. All right? So that's how you would compare them. Now let's take a look at ordering. Okay? Now, you might be able to do this on your own already based on the number line that we just worked with. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to and try these on your own. If you aren't sure how to do these and you want to just watch the video, I'm going to begin correcting them now. If not, continue to go ahead and pause the video. So, here we go. Now remember, our first step is to determine the values of the integers based on the given symbols. Well, negative 6 is negative 6. Negative 8, or I'm sorry, positive 8 is positive 8. Negative 9 and positive 13. So these are pretty basic symbols. We don't need a number line. So now what we need to do is think, okay, which one of these we want the least, so that we're going to have the one that's going to be farthest left first on the number line. So in this case, you would start, you'd go 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9. So the lowest number here out of this group is going to be negative 9. So we put a comma there. Then we're done with our negative 9. So then, of course, we can go look for other negatives. There's only one other negative, so it's negative 6. And then we would be crossing over into the 0 into the positive numbers. And then we'd simply say, okay, which is greater, 8 or 13? And in this case, the positive 8 is less than the positive 13. So the order of these integers is negative 9 is less than negative 6, negative 6 is less than 8, 8 is less than 13. Okay? So now we come down and look at number 2. Again, what we do is we determine the values of the integers based on the given symbols. This is negative 19, but it's the absolute value of negative 19. So absolute value of negative 19 is actually a positive 19 based on the units that you'd count to get to negative 19. This is positive 12, and then we have the absolute value of negative 21. So again, that means that you would be 21 units left on the number line. Those 21 units would be written as a positive 21. Okay, so now we'd simply start and say, okay, we have negative 3 and we have all the rest have been turned into positive numbers. And so my first number will be negative because negative is the least because you go left. So we have negative 3. And now we just look at our positive amounts. Positive 12 would come next if you're going right on the number line. And then you would have positive 19. But we're not going to write it as positive 19 because that's not what they want us to compare in order. They want us to compare the original amount as it's written. So we're going to make sure that we say the absolute value of negative 19 compared to 12 and negative 3. And then we're going to also write down the absolute value of negative 21 would come next because we are talking about absolute value. And so there would be the order of those numbers. Negative 3 is lower than positive 12. Positive 12 is lower than the absolute value of negative 19. And the absolute value of negative 21 is greater than all of those because you're talking about positive amounts. All right? Now, the last set of numbers, okay, again, what we'd want to do is determine the value of each number. Negative 37 is negative 37. The absolute value of 15 is, of course, 15. The value of 11 is 11. Negative 3 is negative 3. Positive 8 is positive 8. And then you have negative 12, but it's the absolute value of negative 12, so that would be a positive 12. So now we can order them from least to greatest, starting with our negatives, because we know they will be the lowest on the number line. And we only actually have this one negative. Well, actually, we have two negatives. We have negative 37, which I almost missed. So obviously, you would have to go further left to get the negative 7. So our first number is negative 7. Then our next number is negative 3. And then after our negative 3 is done, we are then have no more negatives left. except for absolute values, so but those are positive. So now we cross over into the positive numbers, and the lowest positive number we have is 8. So we have positive 8 after negative 3. And then we have 11, because even with these absolute values, 11 is lower. And then we look and we have, oh, we have the absolute value of negative 12, which gives us a value of positive 12. So we're going to write that as the absolute value of negative 12, because we know it represents the counting amount of positive 12. And then we have the absolute value of 15. All right, and so we're all done, and we make sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers compared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers compared, and they are in lowest from least to greatest. Negative 37 is less than negative 3. Negative 3 is less than positive 8. 11 is greater than 8. Negative 12. Absolute value of 12 is greater than 11. The absolute value of 15 is positive 15, which is greater than positive 12. And so there is how we do it. All right, so hopefully this gave you a good idea of how to order and compare integers. If you need more help, you can watch other videos online or use your book.